what I want to do at this point is just talk about kind of, I'm going to start with the drums, and we're going to eventually tackle all of these different instruments and kind of our concept, how it comes together. I start with the drums because we are the best and most important. So this big drum that I am looking at right here is similar to that big drum, the shiny one, and back there with the big mallet on top of that, which is called what? Who knows? The bass drum. Other parts of the drum set, just yell it out. What do we have? Other parts. Snare drum, cymbals, hi-hat, floor tom, and high tom. That's all of them. So the bass drum, really, this is the same thing as that bass drum back there. It's just a little bit smaller, but it's my biggest, deepest sound, right? I have a feeling we're going to get another performance. No, I thought he was going to give it a whack. Play the bass drum! Oh! Yes. So there's our bass drum. We also have the snare drum. Why is the snare drum called the snare drum? Does anybody know? Because it has snares on the bottom of it. Not everybody has seen this, but on every snare drum, there are two sitting back there as well. You've got these metal things that are snares that are sitting on the bottom of the drum. So if I've got this lever that can flip them off so they're not touching the drum anymore. And when I play this drum now, it's going to sound kind of like the other drums do. Same kind of deal. And then I flip this switch and all of a sudden the snares are now touching the bottom drum head, and it makes the sound different. Right? We've got that snare drum sound that a lot of people are familiar with. We've heard that all before. The reasoning behind that, can anybody guess why you would ever want to do that to a drum other than making it sound different and weird? Because I could also like take my keys and put it on a drum and it would sound like, I don't know why I'd want that sound. Why did they do this sound? Any guesses? No wrong answer. Yeah.
It's for marching.
For marching. Yeah. Tell me more about that. Why would you want to alter the sound?
So it stands out.
So it stands out, yes. So let's say that we are on a battlefield right now and there's a battle happening, and this is hundreds of years ago. If I wanted to have somebody hear the drum way over in the woods out there, and I'm hitting this as hard as I can, which I won't do because I won't make our arms bleed, but arms bleed? Ears bleed. My arms would bleed. That's pretty loud. But if you put these things on the bottom, all of a sudden, more full, piercing, loud sound that can be heard above all other things. So what would happen is somebody would play a rhythm on the snare drum, and that would coordinate the troops on the battlefield to do a certain thing. So you've seen these kind of drums before in like a marching band. Does this band march? Am I looking at my marching band right now? Okay, so you know this quite well. All these different elements. Let's say I was going to play a really lame kind of, I would get fired from your marching band, but here's like a basic marching beat maybe. We've got the bass drum. Who carries the bass drum in this band? That's you! Broad shoulders. Yes, it's heavy. So, that's our bass drum rhythm. You would probably play something better and more interesting, which would go with this. And then, it's a good one, it's a good rhythm. Why not? So the snare drum might have a rhythm. This is an old rhythm, but something like. Cymbal player, we might have somebody carrying the cymbals and doing just a really simple thing. This is where the hi-hat comes in. You've heard that before. So all I did is I took these different marching elements and I played them all at the same time, right? Captain Obvious. The first bass drum pedal, right now I'm playing this bass drum. Everybody's seen what's behind here, right? That little pedal that I'm hitting that does the wacky thing to the drum. The first one of these was invented in 1905, and it pretty much was exactly that model, the first one that came out. So I don't know who thought that they could play all these things at the same time, but at the time it was like unbelievable. So that time period, I'm going to go a little bit before that, mid 1800s, late 1800s. All of these kind of instruments that you're looking at, well, maybe not all, let's stick to the drums. These marching drums were used primarily for like wartime, whether it's a marching band or battlefield type stuff. They were used for wartime. What war were we thinking about in the mid 1800s in America? The Civil War. So we have a bunch, the Civil War happened, right? We have a bunch of surplus instruments. I'm going to focus on New Orleans for future reasons. I'll come back to it. In New Orleans, we have a bunch of just instruments hanging around. We have bass drums like that, snare drums. We have, what else would we have that's in a old-timey marching band? Trumpets or maybe cornet. What else?
Bless you. Thank you.
What other instruments are in like an old, like classic marching band? Flute? Yes. Clarinet, maybe? Right? Tuba or sousaphone or something like that? Awesome. So all those instruments are in New Orleans in the late 1800s. Also, the slave trade brought over a bunch of Africans to America against their will, and it's in general we've all studied it. It's an awful thing that happened, but one of the beautiful things that came over with this whole African culture is their approach to music. Now, every Sunday in New Orleans at Congo Square, which is a little like downtown, a little like common area, they allowed the slaves to go and like get their Africanness out on Sundays. It's like, okay, you can go and do your African thing, and then you're gonna come and work at my plantation for no money. So on these Saturdays, they would eventually start playing like some of these West African rhythms, which has this special thing to it. This rhythm that I played right now is straight eighth. All of you know, I think, what straight eighth notes are. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and straight up and down, completely even. Completely even. African music has this interesting thing. One component that it has is this idea of an uneven eighth note, a swung eighth note, which a lot of you know about. So the drum call that I played before sounded like this. We all know it from the start of movies. An African drum call to a similar kind of rhythm would sound something like this, which has a really different kind of feel to it, uneven. It might go with a rhythm like this, which is called soli. Beep, uneven. What would happen if I took my straight eighth note drum beat and I put my new swung eighth note to it? Old way, new way. And I'm doing a bunch of different rhythms to kind of fill in the gaps and make it happen. But basically, that exact thing happened late 1800s in Congo Square. You've got African slaves, you've got recently, enabled and aware of wartime kind of population that has these marches sitting in their head from the Civil War, and you get these things together, and all of a sudden, blammo, you get this new kind of thing that other instruments were able to kind of latch onto and add in.
So there's a lot of stuff that Phil was playing there, a lot of different rhythms kind of sitting on top of each other. I can't play all those different rhythms. I really have to choose kind of one thing at a time. And I don't need to because he's got a lot of it covered. So the question is, how does this instrument kind of lock in with that? So, fundamental question, I guess, to answer first is, which of those drums does this sound the most like? It seems like a pretty obvious answer. It's the bass, right? It's the same range. And so when he's playing that, the thing I'm thinking about is, okay, so what rhythm amongst all those can I tie in? So you want to just play what you're playing on the bass drum?
Sure.
Yeah. So you peel everything else away and you just do that. So I'm going to do something like. So that's my role, really, as the bass, is to augment what he's doing. That's the core of the rhythm there, except I can add one thing that he doesn't have, which is pitch. So basically, you put these two instruments together and you have a harmonic drum set. That's my job.
So my job, sort of like what the bass does, is I kind of try to complement what the bass and the drums do, because pianos could never obviously march in these marching bands. So whenever we end up playing with them, we either function as sort of like a horn, where we play our own thing, or we end up supporting what they're doing. So where they're doing the gentlemen, if you would mind. Just like that.
So what the guitar does is something pretty much similar to that. Like nowadays, you a lot of times think of guitar as like doing what Hendrix does, like all the lead, like all that kind of thing. But like back in like 1900s, early all of that, it was like a banjo that a lot of times played the thing, and the banjo doesn't have like an amplification to get like really loud, so you can't play all those like lead lines and all those screaming guitar solos. So it was pretty much just another percussion instrument that also, like the bass, happened to also be able to do pitch. So instead of, so pretty much you have to lock in with whatever the drums are doing and kind of just do a rhythm part to that, which is very similar to what he did. So you want to try it?
1, 3.
So all that stuff is like really good for making you want to dance, but if you also want to sing, you're going to need some kind of melodic instrument to carry over all of that. And most horns, I would say that what we do is pretty much try to replicate what the voice does. And everyone's capable of singing, and a horn player is just really trying to do something similar to that with a different timbre. So the old horn lines, you'd have something like maybe a cornet might play the melody because it sticks out the most. Then maybe you'd have like the clarinet sort of dance around that a little bit. Trombone doing a similar thing that's in a different type of range. So the three horns together sort of interplay a little bit, and we thought we would play a little song. And I'll play the melody, and these guys will kind of color it in. And when we're done, see if you notice. Let's do just the three of us, just once through.
Yeah.
So you might know this song. Yeah. Does anyone know what that song was? Yeah, one of the most well-known songs of all time in Western music, and it comes from New Orleans, basically. And so you've got your groove section over here. This is what makes you want to move. And then you got your melody section, is what makes you want to sing. So when you put it all together, that's the roots of jazz, really, when it comes down to it. It's all these different things that have been borrowed from other things and repurposed and made to just to groove. So, you guys want to jam?
Yeah.
It's that easy. No, it's actually an enormous amount of fun. And sometimes you get to use music, sometimes you just know kind of what you're going to do, and you learn some common stuff so that you can kind of jam together. And jazz band is fun, and the skills you learn in jazz band make it pretty viable to just be a musician for like a living. It's like amazing. It's like the coolest thing. We're gonna, I don't know, maybe we could take a few questions. If anybody has any questions about instruments, what we play, what we do, we take a couple real quick. Anybody got anything they're curious about? No, you guys aren't that boring. Who wants to be, there we go, yeah.
It's called, this group is called an orchestra.
Well, when it's 18 people, I would consider that an orchestra, but I think there's a philosophical argument to be made.
What defines,
this is
that's
an
my
orchestra.
question, what is an orchestra?
If you want to call it an orchestra, you can. Yeah, I think I could put a two-person group together, and well, you know how like sometimes it's kind of cool to wear like a pink glow-in-the-dark shirt to a funeral. What you need to pull it off is confidence. You got to believe in your product. So if I want to call this an orchestra, I'm calling it an orchestra. That's That's a good question, though. That's stuff worth thinking about, honestly. Has anybody got any other questions? Like, how do we, what's it like to work, or how did we get here, or anything like that? You got a question about?
Do you guys know like what key like you're all playing in keys? Like, no.
For a really common tune like that, before we played, at some point, somebody said, what key? And somebody said F, and probably a horn player's like, is that F concert, or my F? No, it's F concert, and then that was it. And then we just remembered it like an hour later. And then if I go play with 10 other new people tomorrow, like at a totally different thing, we probably have to figure it out again. But if we played a really well-known tune, like Stella by Starlight, that's always in B flat, right?
Yeah.
So like certain tunes are like always in a certain key. So you kind of just learn some things and kind of go with the flow.
Unless you're singing, unless you're with the vocals.
Unless there's a singer and then you want to be kind to them and put them in a key that works. We can take like one more question and then we'll like close out with like another tune maybe. Anything? You guys are so tired. Okay, we're gonna play one more song for you guys. This is an arrangement that I did of a really old tune. The song's called Stealin' Apples, and it was made famous by Benny Goodman.
I can see it on your screen.
Does anybody know what Benny Goodman played? Clarinet, yeah. Does anybody know why you know his name? You know the Benny Goodman name because before Benny Goodman there weren't really big bands. There wasn't really swing music. Jazz was not popular. It was sort of like a lower class type of thing. That's how people saw it. And Benny Goodman made hip swinging music popular. And he used all young people, and they were like the punk rockers of the 30s, and it was out of control. So this is sort of in the spirit of that era. This is my own version of Stealin' Apples. It's going to feature a little bit of everybody, and we'll close out with this. You guys ready? Oh yeah. This is
One, two, three.
You gotta go somewhere else now.